Hello, philosophy class. Thanks for joining us in this video. A couple of things that, if you're in my theology class as well, as if you're in both philosophy and theology, this part of the video will be similar. That is this: I'm not as tech stupid as you might think. It's easy to think that because sometimes old guys like us aren't very savvy. Well, I'm not that old. I'm only 45 or something like that. And so I'm not completely, tech stupid. So I know things like, oh, look, I can look and see how many views I have. This video has 82 views. And you're thinking, oh, wow, anybody knows that. However, I know also that I can go to my channel and I can go to my analytics, right? I can open up YouTube Studio and I can analyze my videos. And when I do that, for example, my let's just take philosophy lessons. So the philosophy Wednesday lesson, that was today's lesson. I published it last night. There's been 53 views. That's great. That means there's been more views than students, okay? Which is fine. That's perfectly fine because I sent it out to both you and your parents. Now, knowing that I sent it out to both you and your parents may have clicked on the video briefly and thought, oh, this is not for me, and clicked off of it, which would change the metrics, because according to YouTube, it's a 7-minute video. The average view duration of the 53 views, the average view duration is 2 minutes and 19 seconds. So if you divide out everybody who sat down and watched it, the guys who watched all 7 minutes, and the people who opened it and clicked off, it was only 2 minutes and 19 seconds. Now, philosophy guys, you're lucky. Latin yesterday had an 18-minute video. Theology had a 19-minute video. Yours was 7. So if you didn't watch it to the end, that's a problem. You need to watch it to the end, and then you needed to watch the other video, which was all of 8 minutes long. It may have been closer to 9, but it was 8 minutes and something. So about the Allegory of the Cave. If you didn't read the Allegory of the Cave, or you didn't at least listen to it and watch the cartoon version, because the drawing out of it really helped to understand it. All you're doing is a disservice to yourself. I can't make you do any of this stuff because you're not here with me, which stinks. I wish you were here. I know that from hearing from you guys, I know that most of you wish you were here as well. This is getting boring and annoying. I get that. But at least when you're here, I can make you read it. I can also wake you up if you go to sleep. So you can say, well, it's like I fell asleep in your lecture. Well, yeah, but here I can choose to leave you asleep, or I can wake you up. But I do want to go through the Allegory of the Cave by Plato. This is very famous. This has a lot to do with his epistemology. What does epistemology mean? Hopefully you remember that term from before. We used that term not too long ago. You know what? Just wait right there. I'm going to go get something that might help me here. Okay, sorry, I went and got a portable whiteboard. So we went over this term a long time ago. This is not, maybe I could have written it better. Epistemology. Peekaboo. Epistemology. What was epistemology? It was the study of how we come to know things, right? Is that immediately apparent given the text? No. Well, yes, if you read more of the text, then yeah, it becomes a little bit more apparent. However, if you just watch the video, that is not immediately clear. There is, and I'm not going to go into that yet. I want you to tell me, what does this apply to? Well, let's look at it first. You've got these guys sitting in a cave, and they're chained up. They're prisoners. They don't necessarily, but it seems that they've been there for all of their conscious existence. The imagery here is very much like except for the fact that they're chained up, the image is very much like a modern cinema. because these guys are chained and they're in front of a large wall. And behind them is burning a great big fire. There's a big fire behind them. And in front of that fire is like a little platform. And on that platform, and there's a wall. And behind the wall, these men walk behind the wall and they're holding little puppets or shapes. And the light from the fire hits the shapes, and the shadows are cast in the far wall. And because the wall is farther away, the shadows are really big. And the chained prisoners, all they can see is they can't turn their heads. They're chained there. So all they can see is the shadows. And they name the shadows. And they talk about what the shadows are doing. And when they hear the men up that are actually holding the little images, when they hear them talk, because of the echo in the room, it sounds as if the shadows are speaking. The acoustics make it so the sound appears to be coming out of the wall, so that the shadows are actually speaking. And so for them, the truth, reality is the shadows. And then, of course, we have this incident where somebody comes down the steps into the cave and takes one of the prisoners, frees him, and forces him to turn around. And says, look, everything that you see on that wall is actually up there. There's the real shapes. Those are the images. And the fire. And he can't even see the fire because it's so bright. He's confused. And when he sees those objects making the shadows. And so the man leads him up to the surface, to where the sun is. And if you've ever gone to a movie during the day, this is one of those classic experiences of American youth. You go to a film in the middle of the afternoon and you're in that super dark theater for 2 hours, or if you're an Avengers fan, for 3 hours, and you come out and it's bright sunshine outside, and first you can't see anything till your eyes finally adjust. And his eyes have never seen daylight, so it's going to take even longer for his eyes to adjust. And he only begins, when he finally starts to see things, he can only see their shadows. And then he can only see reflections of things in the water. But finally, eventually, he can see the sun and can contemplate the sun. And eventually begins to see that the sun controls the seasons, and that, and controls the years, and all these other things. And he revels in the true reality instead of that false reality that's in the cave. But imagine if he decided that he would. Oh, and of course, because of this, he begins to take pity on those men still in the cave, realizing that their life is fairly miserable. And so he also says, imagine the prisoners had competitions where they gave each other awards. Oh, look, you win the board spray cleaner. You win this very attractive cell phone case. No, where they gave each other awards for who could, name the shadow that came up first, or who could predict what shadows were coming next, and so they would pass around a crown or a trophy, that, oh, look, see, he's the winner. Imagine that they had such games and contests. Would our man who has been rescued, our prisoner that's now free and up in the true world, would he care about those awards and those honors? Of course not. They're useless, right? Suppose he goes back to free them. And these guys are having this competition or whatever, and he's now gone from the sun to the dark, and so now his eyes are having trouble adjusting again to the cave light, and so he doesn't see the shadows as easily as they do. And so they begin to laugh at him and to ridicule him, to scorn him, and say to him things like, see what happens? You see that? When you go up there, the sun destroys your eyes, right? They accuse him of, by going up there, you destroy your eyesight. And they laugh at him, thinking that their reality is true. He further comments that if someone actually did attempt to go and free them, surely they would eventually kill that man. Is he talking about Socrates? Is he referring to himself? Does he know? Is he predicting his own death? Is that what this is about? That's very well probably part of it. Is this the fate of Christ? He says that is, however, the enlightened are burdened with that they must ascend to learning and to the good, and to the world of learning, the intellectual life. But then they must also descend back down to the prisoners and share in their troubles, even at the risk of death. So it's interesting. So there's a lot of things that we could, that this could apply to. Maybe for some of you this applies to certain aspects of your life. Maybe it applies to certain, the world in which we live. That we're now immersed in such a false virtual world that we've lost sight as to what we're doing or where we're going. There's a lot of potential possibilities. I want you to think about that. I want you to try to analyze this situation. Rewatch the video if you have to. I want you to try to draw your version of the cave and the situation inside. So, get out a piece of paper and draw it, right? And you got your fire, whatever. However, here we go. Isn't that beautiful? And then we got people. Hi, I'm a person. I don't look like a person, but I'm a person. Anyway, draw that and then show it to me. Show it to me on one of our Zoom sessions. I do expect that you will get on a Zoom session twice a week, and I want to see that picture as part of a Zoom session. And I'm tracking who's showing up to these Zoom sessions. Soon that'll be put in a more formal thing. Right now I'm just listing it. It reminds me I got to put a date on it. Now, I said also, and there's a relationship here between another dialogue that you read and the allegory. I want someone to tell me, and maybe the first person to email me this, the first person to get this in an email to me will get like a bunch of extra credit points. Like I'll put in an extra credit assignment, or I'll just boost one of your grades or something and give you a couple of actual extra credit points. The first one to email me with the dialogue that we have read already that deals with a man. So when this guy is brought out of the cave, there's a certain amount of violence that's done to him. He's stunned, right? He's torpified. That was the word that the text used, torpified. The torpedo fish stung me and I was torpified, right? So in other words, when they were discussing justice in this dialogue, they were discussing virtue in this other dialogue. And the person with whom Socrates is discussing it says that Socrates has confused his tongue. He's torpified his tongue. He's numbed his tongue, and he's done violence to me, right? This coming out of this realization of ignorance, that I'm in the world of ignorance and I need to ascend to the world of learning and the good. What dialogue is that? Where do we talk about the torpedo fish and being torpified, which we translated as being stunned? First person to email me with that gets a prize. And other than that, I want to see you in those things. I want to discuss things with you, and hope you guys are doing well. Take care.